Hello. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ivy, also known as the Geek Goddess. As you can see here, I have all my fall hopefuls. So books that I want to read during the fall, sometime during the fall, between September, October, and November. These are some of the books, not all of the books, that I want to read. So let's go ahead and get started, because if I let this go, it starts sliding towards me. So let's just go ahead and jump in. So the first book that I want to talk about is Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. This book is one of my most anticipated new releases for 2025. I have been wanting to read this book so bad. This is a Lilith and Lucifer retelling, and I believe this is a dark romance, and so I have been dying to read this, and now that I finally have my hands on it, I definitely need to find some sort of excuse to read it. I might do like a 24-hour or like 48-hour readathon so that I can just read this, because I need to. Okay, the next book that has been on my TBR for like years now is The Final Empire, book 1 in the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. Actually, technically, the whole trilogy, the whole first era of the Mistborn series is a part of my TBR that I want to read, because I have a reading vlog that I am thinking about doing in November, where I read the Mistborn saga or the Mistborn trilogy to see if it is worth the read or not for me, because I have started the Cosmere universe series. I've read a few books by Brandon Sanderson now, and so the Mistborn series I feel like is the biggest book series that is also highly recommended for people that want to get into the high fantasy genre, and it is probably one of the most beloved, if not the most beloved, book series of Brandon Sanderson, and where they say to start with him. And so I definitely want to read this, give it a try, and give my opinion on each of these. I don't know. All I know is that this is like, what if the Dark Lord won, right? So in this world, the Dark Lord wins, what would happen? And from there, our story takes off. And I am excited for that. The next book that I definitely want to read during fall is Mary by Nat Cassidy. This is a book. So I'm coming out with a reading vlog for Nat Cassidy, where I read all his books and determine if like his books are worth the read or not. It's like called like author deep dives, where I kind of go a little bit into the author as well. And this is supposed to be a post-menopausal horror book, right? Where this woman, she is reaching menopause, right? And she's going through all these crazy symptoms, and she's like, am I going crazy? And the doctor just tells her that it's menopause, but is it menopause or is something sinister happening to her? I have heard mixed reviews. I've heard that this book's not that great, but I've also heard from more people that it is really good. In fact, this is a few people, including I believe Jordaline Reed's favorite Nat Cassidy book. So I cannot wait to read this. This is actually his debut horror novel. So really want to read this and check it out and see for myself whether I think it's worth it or not. The next book that I want to read is How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. This just seems like such a fun time, because we are following our main character, and her name is Davi. So Davi is basically always the hero. So she always gets reincarnated over and over again as the hero, but no matter how many times she reincarnates as a hero, the Dark Lord, the villain, always ends up unaliving her. So after being reincarnated over and over again, Davi has enough. Like, she's like, okay, enough. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being reincarnated as a hero. What's gonna happen? Since the villain always wins, I'm gonna be the villain. So she attempts to be the villain, and I've heard that this is like a really fun, humorous time. I really want to read this. Like, it just seems like such a good book. So definitely want to check it out and see for myself if it is worth the read or not. So we'll see what I managed to read this in. The next book that I want to read is a cozy fantasy horror novel, and that is Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell, because I've literally heard nothing but good things about this book. In this one, we are following our main character, and she is a monster. Her name is Shisheshin, and Shisheshin is a shapeshifter, right? And so basically she is being hunted by these people in the village, and this human ends up being protected or taken in by this woman named Homily. This woman named Homily, and she basically nurses Shisheshin back to health. And then Shisheshin realizes that she is forming romantic feelings for this woman. It is a sapphic monster romance, and so she really wants Homily to hold Shisheshin's eggs. I don't know. I really like this version of it. It's literally my two favorite colors, purple and green. So I need to read this. The next book that I'm going to be reading for a reading vlog that I have coming out in October, where I read book versus movie, right? And that is going to be a book with a movie that I actually have not seen, and it is shameful that I have not seen this. I've only seen bits and pieces, and that is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. Blatty. So this is the original story. I believe this came before the book of the original Exorcist story. So he was a writer and a filmmaker. He wrote The Exorcist in 1971. And so I don't know if that turned into this novel or if this novel turned into the Exorcist movie. I don't know which way, but I don't really need to go into detail about The Exorcist. I feel like pretty much everybody knows what this is about. It's about a girl that gets possessed, an exorcism. So I want to read this. The next book that I want to read for another reading vlog that I have coming out is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. So I want to start doing deep dives on books, and you're going to see another book that I'm going to be doing a deep dive in later on as well. But this is a book that is a horror, so it's a horror book, but I heard that there are so many different ways to read this, so many different ways to piece this together. This is a book that takes over a month to read because of all the information in it. Like, there are some pages that are just filled to the brim with text, and then there are pages where like there's literally like nothing, right? It's just a few little things of text. And then there's photos, there's all kinds of stuff. And this is the fully colored illustrated version. So I'm very excited to read this. Don't know, anybody time somebody talks about this, nobody really goes into detail about it. I believe all I know is that this is about a house that looks bigger on the inside than it does on the outside, and so they're trying to figure out what is going on with this house. And it is a labyrinth of a house, and this book is also plays out as a labyrinth, so it adds to that experience. Okay, so the next book that I really want to read is one that everybody's talking about right now, everybody and their mama's talking about, and that is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. This is a lit RPG, and say no more, say no less. That's all I needed to know. We are following our main character. What is his name? Carl, I'm assuming. So we're following Carl. I'm assuming his name is Carl, right? Dungeon Crawler Carl. I'm assuming his name is Carl. And so he just gets broken up with, right? By his girlfriend. So it's his ex-girlfriend now. I think he just gets broken up with. It's her cat, Princess Donut. And Princess escapes out the apartment building at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so Carl goes outside to go get Princess Donut. And that's when everything in the universe and the world collapses. Like, it all just turns flat. So everybody that was in their house at 2 o'clock in the morning across the world is now, they're done. They're unalive. They're gone, right? They're all gone. Everybody in the world is gone that was inside. Survive. And he automatically gets sent to this dungeon to compete in these series of games. The next book that I want to read is a book that everybody is talking about. This book specifically, though, everybody knows this book, I feel like, but this book specifically I wanted to read because of Leandra, the TBR Zero. She just read this in a Battle of the Booktubers reading vlog, and she absolutely loved it, and I was like, I want to read that. And that is The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is all 5 books rolled into one. This is about a hitchhiker, I guess. I think it's a guy. He ends up, so seconds before the Earth is demolished, Arthur Dent is saved by Ford Prefect. And he basically, together they have to travel. They have to do all this journey throughout space. So I really want to read this either with my fiance, and we read it. I want to read this with my fiance, and I kind of want to read it to my kids as well. So I don't know if we're going to take turns reading it to the kids, but I feel like I mentioned this before, but my fiance is a huge fan of Guardians of the Galaxies, and he is not much of a reader. So I'm trying to find fictional books that he can get into, because if he does read, it's usually like a self-help book. And even then he never finishes them because, you know, they're all kind of very like information heavy and not really entertaining. So I'm like, you need to try a fiction book. And so I kind of want to find books that are similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, which is why I picked up this one. And I have another one as well that I might be picking up, hopefully. But this one is for sure like one that I want to read. Okay, moving on to my second stack. Okay, so another book that I definitely want to read during fall is Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan. I feel like this has been on my TBR since the beginning of this year or last year, the end of last year. And in this one we are following our main character. Her name is Ray, and is in the hospital because she has a terminal illness and she knows that she is not going to make it. And so her sister ends up reading this book series to her that her and her sister end up falling in love with. And she reads it to her in the hospital, and then one day Ray goes to sleep. She wakes up and she's like, hey, there's like somebody at the end of her bed, and they're like, hey, you're gonna end up passing away. So you can either just pass away, or you can try to go to this fictional world, that fictional world that you read about, and find the everlasting flower, bring it back, and then you will be made whole again. And so Ray's like, okay, bet. And so she ends up taking the portal, going through the portal, and at first she thinks it's just a dream, but it's not. She wakes up in the villainess's body. The next book that I have to read, because I was obsessed with the first book, is Enchantra by Kaylee Smith. I almost want to act like this book doesn't exist, because I feel like Phantasma was just so beautiful, and I loved Ophelia, and I could not stand her sister Genevieve in the first story. So I almost don't even want to read Genevieve's perspective, but a lot of people have been saying that this one is even better than Phantasma, so I might give it a shot. Maybe I'll be surprised, shooketh by it. And yeah, so this is book 2 in the Wicked Games series. Okay, the next 2 books that I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about them together. So I'm going to put this one here, and I'm going to talk about these 2 books together, because I'm going to do a reading vlog where I put these books head to head, because these books are often compared to each other. And that is Gothikana by Runix and Nocticadia by Keri Lake. People often talk about these 2 books, and they're like, Gothikana is better, Nocticadia is better. And so I kind of want to put them head to head. These are both dark romances that take place in, I believe, like a dark academia sort of setting. And I believe they have so much in common, almost like one inspired the other. I don't know which way it went, but I definitely want to read this, put these head to head, and give you my opinion on who I think reigns supreme. The next book that I want to read for my high fantasy vlog is going to be The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwain. So I believe this fantasy vlog is going to come out probably in November, because I have quite a few chunky books to read. But basically what I did was I went on a whole bunch of high fantasy booktubers pages, YouTube pages, and I watched all the videos where they are recommending beginners, the most beginner friendly high fantasy books. And I watched countless videos, countless lists, and I compiled the 5 most popular, actually I compiled the 10 most popular books that were mentioned the most, but I'm going to be reading the top 5. I did buy all 10 though, not gonna lie. And one of the top books that was mentioned was The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwain. I did have this one before I even found out that it was going to be one of the top 5, but I'm so glad that it is, because I didn't have to buy another book. However, I did buy the second book in the series, just because I'm so sure that I'm going to love it. And this is a Norse mythology inspired story where basically these gods are horrible, right? They're horrible gods. We don't want these gods to be alive, and so the gods are not alive anymore. However, they end up coming back, and now our little human friends have to fight against these big bad gods. And so thus a wild story ensues, and I'm so excited to be reading this. The next book that I want to read, this is a completely different, doing a little little U-turn here. I really want to read this book. If you guys have watched any of my reading vlogs, you guys probably know that I'm a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons. I literally have a compilation of, in like almost every reading vlog that I do, of me playing Dungeons and Dragons because I play so often. And so I was obsessed when I saw that this book was coming out, and that is Roll for Romance by Lenora Woods. And in this one, we are following two characters. We are following Sadie Brooks, and we are following, what's his name? Noah Walker. So Noah Walker and Sadie Brooks, they are people, right? They are people that start to play D&D. And so Sadie becomes a human cleric in D&D. If you guys know your D&D classes, or even if you played Baldur's Gate, you would know what a cleric is. And then she meets Noah Walker, who also ends up becoming a charismatic lute strumming elf in the D&D campaign. So I'm assuming he's a bard, right? I'm assuming he's a bard. And so these two characters in the campaign, not outside of the campaign, inside the campaign, these two fictional characters start to fall in love as their D&D campaign evolves. And obviously because of that, our two main characters start to have a romance outside of D&D as well. That's what it's been pitched as to me. I don't know if it's different from that, but all I need to know is it's romance, it's D&D. Give me a nerdy fun time. And I've honestly been wanting to read a Dungeons and Dragons based romance that is not YA, because I know there's like Dating in Dungeons or Dungeons and Dating, some other book series, but it's YA and I'm not a YA girly, so I'm excited for this. The next book that I'm going to be reading is another one that I want to do for a deep dive. So 2 books. The first one is going to be Katabasis by R.F. Kuang, which is R.F. Kuang's interpretation of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. And so because of that, I want to put it head to head with the actual classic book, The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. I have been wanting to read this book for years now. And 2025 seems to be the book where I am picking up classics that are 75 hundreds of years old, and so far I've been enjoying every classic book that I've picked up, and I'm hoping that that's the case for this book as well. This is the John Ciardi translated version of the Divine Comedy, because I heard that this is the most easy to understand, yet it still keeps its original translation of the Divine Comedy. So I'm very excited to be reading it, analyzing the text, and putting it head to head with the Katabasis book of R.F. Kuang by R.F. Kuang. Definitely want, like I said, I want to start doing deep dives on books and different topics and things like that, because I'm a nerd. And this just sounds fun to me. And I am a fan of Over the Garden Wall. I am a fan of Devil May Cry. So obviously I need to read the OG, right? So 3 more books, bear with me. These next 2 books are from that reading vlog that I want to come out with, where it's like book versus horror movie. The first one is going to be Ring by Koji Suzuki. This is the original story to the Ring movies. So want to check out the novel and compare it to the actual book. To compare it to the actual movie, because I have not watched the movie since I was like a kid. And then I also want to read The Silence by Tim Lebbon. And this is what inspired The Quiet Place, or A Quiet Place. So I definitely want to read this because it inspired A Quiet Place. And I definitely want to read this because it inspired The Ring. So, and then I'm going to be putting them head to head with the movies. And these 2 are books that I have watched the movies before I read the book. However, with The Ring, it's been a long time, so I don't really remember it. So I don't feel like it has that much competition. However, this book does, because I did really enjoy A Quiet Place. So we shall see. And last but certainly not least, this is another book that is going to be in the high fantasy reading vlog, and that is Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames. This is another book that was highly recommended as one of the top 5 most recommended books for high fantasy beginners. This is a funny book about these, okay, so it's like a team of mercenaries, I believe, or so we follow a man named Clay Cooper, and his band were once of the most feared crew of mercenaries right in the Wyld. But then all of a sudden they get older and they fall apart, right? They're done with their fearsome days. They don't want to be feared anymore. They just want to relax, retire, basically. But then one of them from Clay's crew ends up coming back, and he's like, hey, I really need your help. And he is like desperate for Clay's help. And so Clay's like, all right, time to get the band back together. And it's them getting back together and trying to go on a new adventure after so long of being retired. So I'm so excited for this one. I heard that this one is very fast paced. I believe it's like dark humorous. So I'm excited to read this one. So that is it, you guys. That is all the books that I want to read during the fall. Well, not all the books, but the ones that I definitely want to knock off my list because I have reading vlogs and stuff for them, and then some that I just want to plain read for fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button. Put a sword emoji to let me know that you got to the very end for Kings of the Wyld. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell to be notified when I post. I post once to twice a week. And make sure you hit that like button because it really helps out my channel. Also, I have all my other socials down below as well. I have my Bookstagram that I just created, my book talk, my Goodreads, and my Amazon wish list all down there as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!